Hi everyone and welcome back to the 3B coding. In today's video from Kotlin tutorial, we are diving into a very important topic again in here, arrays dimension. After covering everything about arrays in general with different examples from accessing the elements of arrays by different ways of accessing to modifying the elements to the array. So it was the simple way of creating arrays, or we can say the array that we were creating, and we have solved different examples and problems to get the concept, and I hope you all practice everything about arrays to get the concept properly. So today we are diving into dimensions of arrays. We will see what are the dimensions of arrays. As you can see in here, we are generally having three types of arrays or three dimensions of arrays. The most used arrays are 1D, 2D and 3D arrays up to 3D arrays. 4D arrays are so rare to use. We are only using for some examples that we can share the concept, but in here I am not confusing you with 4D arrays. Up to 3D arrays in this video we are going to discuss, which will be multi-dimensional arrays. So let's see what are these different levels of nesting or nested arrays inside of arrays. We can say one array can hold another array inside of it. We can see how we are having 1D, 2D and 3D arrays. In here, the first dimensional or the one-dimensional arrays are in here. So as you can see in here, 1D arrays are a single row elements. In this example, you can also see that in here I have the memory representation of how our 1D arrays are stored inside of our memory. This is the memory address 1000, 1002, 4, 5, 6. This is the memory address that in contiguous memory address it is located or stored. So in here the indices of our arrays you can see at the top. A score would be the array name, and 0, 1, 2, 3, these are the indices of arrays. And as I said, the base address or memory address is this 1000 and 1002. These are the memory addresses, as you can see, and the value will be inside of it that it is 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. You can see these values are in flattened shape or in a row, in one row only. It is stored inside of our memory. In this example also you can see different ways of creating array. By simple way, by array of function, you can create your array and specify your elements inside of your array. So in the next line you can see int arr, which will be the specific way of creating arrays by specifying its type. This function will specify int array of, specify the type of array. Our array elements will be all in integer types, and if you use another type in here you would have definitely an error. So let's jump to the next one. Yes, two-dimensional arrays or 2D arrays. As you can see in here, it will be called matrix, or we can say rows and columns in a table shape. We would have rows and column for that, and it will be array inside of array. This array will be inside of this array, and it will be nested array, one array inside of another array, rows and column, combination of rows and columns. As you can see in this example, we have 3 rows and 4 columns. You can see by it is matrix shape representation. You can also understand if you're coming from math background. You can understand it is matrix shape. 0 0 for first one, the first index is 0 0 0, and 0 1 0 2 0 3, the first row, second row and third row. You can see in that way all of them. So the 2D arrays are rows and columns that you can see in here. The three-dimensional arrays or the 3D arrays, we can call them the collection of 2D arrays or the collection of tables. We can have a collection of tables inside of an array and it will be 3D array. So in this example also you can see the first dimension or the second dimension and the third dimension, the three axes of our 3D array. The 3D array can be in cube shape, and you can see in here the example of 3D array. In this example also, the cube variable, I have created a three-dimensional arrays. This array is contain of two tables, 2D arrays, a combination of two 2D arrays, and in here you can see the elements that I have passed inside of each table or each 2D arrays, and at the end we can get our result in two tables, an array of two tables. So now maybe you will ask why we need for array dimensions and why we are using the dimensions of arrays. So in different purposes, you can use the first dimension or the two-dimensional array or three-dimensional arrays. The one-dimensional array you can use when you're having only one specification or only suppose you have the name of some students to store inside of your memory in contiguous memory location, or you would have a table of marks, names, and different specification of students you can use from two-dimensional arrays. Or if you have suppose in different terms you have the different tables of students from each years or from each category of students, you would have different tables inside of an array to represent them for data analytics or anything else in your as per your purpose. You can use them each. So in the practical demonstration we will work with different dimensions of arrays with different examples and with different problems to make you understand about this crucial topic. So this was all about in theory section. See you guys in the practical demonstration to discuss more about dimensions of arrays. Now in practical demonstration of arrays dimension, I have already created a new project, array dimension demo. You can also do that by going file, under new, click on project, name your project, and click on create to start a new Kotlin project. In here I have already written some code to save our time. These codes or examples are related to different dimensions of arrays from 1D array to 2D and 3D arrays, and in these examples I have given examples related to accessing the elements of arrays differently by using loops or their indices and modifying the new elements for my arrays. The first example is related to 1D array or single dimension array. The first thing that I have done in here is I have declared my variable name, and by array of function I have created my array and initialize the names variable to an array. So inside of my array I have different names of people, and these names are Ali, Sarah, and John, three elements inside of my array. And in here I have printed the first index of my array by using a string template, the name of my array, and by specifying its index I have printed the first element. And in the next line I have modified a new value for my first or from elements the second element, which will be Sarah, to a new value Zara. And in the next line, I have accessed the elements of my array by using two different for loops. And these two different for loops are, the first for loop is related to for each loop for accessing directly the elements of my arrays by declaring variable name, and it will be initialized accordingly depending to elements of my arrays, and one by one it will print in the inside of my for loop, and it will be shown in console. So in the next for loop, I have accessed the element of my arrays by their indices, and the first thing that I have done in here is I have declared a variable I, and it will be initialized to the first index of my array, which will be index 0, and by iteration it will print or access the indices of my array and their value in here. So let's run our program and see what will happen. As you can see in here, the first thing that I have printed the first index of my array in here by println function by using its index. The first index is 0, located in 0 position. I have printed in here first name Ali. Ali is in the first index of my array and the first element of my array. And second thing, I have modified a new value in here, Zara, to the first index of my array, and it will be second element from elements. And in here you can see I have printed using the for each loop to access directly my array elements, and it will use the iterator to iterate different elements of array or collections. So I have printed, and you can see the changes in here. Sarah is Zara in here now, and the second for loop, by accessing their indices, I have printed all with their indices, the values with the indices. In here I have printed the index plus their value, and it is shown in console. You can see that. So this was related to single dimension array. I have modified a new value to access differently by using different for loops and by using their index. So let's jump to the next problem or next example related to 2D arrays. Let's comment this. The second example is related to 2D arrays. It will be matrix style or table style. I have declared my variable matrix, and by array of function you can see I have created the first level of my array, and it will be two-dimensional array. And in here I have created a table inside of my array, and it will be 2D array. So in here you can see it has 2 rows and 3 columns, 2 rows and 3 columns, and in different columns I have different rows and columns I have different elements. And in the next line you can see I have accessed the element using their indices. So by the name of my array and their indices, the first index will be the second row. In here you can see the second row will be the first index, and the index 2 will be 6, because the indices are started from 0, 0, 1 or 2, and 1 will be the second row. In here you can see I have printed, and in the next line I have modified a new element in the first row. You can see in the first row, which will be 0 index, and second element, which will be the element 1, which will be the index 1, which will be 2 in here. And by using different for loops, I have accessed also with for loops to print all of my elements. You can see in here the first or outer for loop is for row, to iterate to rows of my to different rows of my elements, and this inner for loop is for accessing the items or different columns, and each time it will print my elements. If and after first row it will print a new line to print the rows, to print the elements in different rows. And in here, by their indices also, I have printed the same, the row I variable in here that I have declared, and it will access them by their indices, and it will iterate to row of my elements, my table or elements. And the inner for loop is again for the elements itself, and it will be accessed by their indices, and each time it will be printed both the indices and their elements. In here you can see. Let's run our program and see what will happen. As you can see in here, the first print that I have printed, the individual. In here you can see the single element that I have printed by using its index. It will be 6 that I have printed, and in the next line I have modified a new element. It will be the second element of the first row, and in the next line I have printed with for each loop in 2 different lines. It will be like a table shape. As you can see in here, it is printed, and you can see the changes. 2 is changed or modified with 99, and in here you can see in different lines with their indices I have printed my elements by their indices and their values in the different lines. And I have successfully printed and accessed all the elements of my array, and this was about 2D array or 2-dimensional arrays, the matrix style or the table style. So hope you guys get everything about this example. So let's jump to the next example, which will be 3D arrays. Now in here we have example related to 3D array or 3-dimensional array, which will be cube style or a collection of tables inside of our array. So in here you can see I have 2 tables inside of my array by creating array of function and int array of. What this function is doing, this function will create array of a specific type. So we would have 2 layers in here with 2 tables. We can say the first layer or first index, which will be index 0, we would have first table, and in the first index we have the second table, and I have created 2 table with different elements. In here you can see 2 table with different elements, and in here I have accessed the element, the first element of my 3D array by using its name and indices position. I have printed the first element, which will be element 0, 0, 0. The index location is first table or first layer, first row, and that specific element which will be in that specific column in that row, and this will be the element that will be located in that index. In the next line I have modified a new element which will be in the index layer 1, which will be the table 1 first row, and the second element which will be this number 2, which will be located in that position. I will change or modify that with 42, and I have looped through my elements by using for loop and by accessing their indices. What this outer for loop will do, this outer for loop will go to the first layer or first table, which will be this table. For us, it will iterate to that table, and that specific row with the this inner for loop inside of my first for loop with its index, it will iterate to the first row of that table, the first table, first row. At the first, it will iterate to that, and this inner the most inner for loop, it will iterate to that specific column and it will print one by one by using the its index, and it will iterate through that specific index, and one by one by meeting it the condition. If there will be elements, it will iterate all of them and print all of them one by one. And in the next line I have printed all the elements one by one by content deep to a string function. What this function is doing, this is for multi-dimensional arrays. If we would not have single dimension array, for 2D array, 3D arrays, we should use content deep to a string to print all the elements for us one by one. So let's run our program and see what will happen. So as you can see in here, the first println that I have printed by using its index, also sorry, it in here I have to change the string in here to 0 0 0. Yeah, let's run again to print according to our string. It was wrong. Okay, the 0 0 0 index that I have printed with println function, and this will print according to an index that we will pass in here. This index is 0 0 0. The first element will be located in there, that it is printed in the console 1. And by for loop in here, after modifying my element in here with 42, the element is located in the first table, first row, and that specific column or that specific element, which will be that was 2. Now in here it is changed to 42. You can see the changes in the console. And by for loop I have printed all the elements, and I have accessed all the elements by their indexes. So you can see the result in the console one by one from here to here. By for loop I have printed, and the last println, by using this content deep to a string function, I have printed all the elements one by one in the string format. It has converted to a string format for us and represented in the flattened shape. And this was the first table, and this was the second table that it has printed all the elements for us. This was all about arrays dimension, and until the next videos which will be related to different problems that I would solve with arrays and arrays dimension. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. See you in the next video. Thank you.